Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
There is nothing racist, xenophobic or wrong about being a little bit scared at the moment, and being scared of a specific constituency and believing that that constituency in this country could be swelled by the arrival of people from Syria. It was a statement of the bleeding obvious, I think, that some people who wish us harm may secrete themselves and hide themselves among people who are fleeing harm. But yesterday's show was dedicated to the question of whether or not we can avoid the trap that they set for us when they do things like what they did in Paris. And the trap is really very simple. You know what they hate, what Daesh hates. They hate the fact that we live happily alongside each other. They hate multiculturalism and they hate tolerance. We really give them a bloody nose, do we? By drawing back? There's a brilliant piece in the paper today by a former IS hostage. Now, I appreciate that someone who's actually been held hostage by Daesh for the last 10 months does not have an insight into these issues anywhere near as good as a journalist or a politician who's been sitting in Britain for the last 20 years. Obviously, having spent time in custody in Syria under the guard of Daesh doesn't give you any particular insights into what they're really like. You'd be much better off watching Fox News or reading the Daily Mail. If you want to know what they're really up to, whatever you do, do not listen to someone who's been imprisoned by them, because that will just be propaganda and nonsense. But anyway, one of them's written an article in the papers today, and it says that he witnessed the absolute fury that was felt when photographs got back to Syria of refugees being welcomed in Europe. It disgusts them to their very core. The absolute opposite of everything they stand for, because they want division and they want violence and they want hatred. Emma goes further. She goes, they want to be shot. They want to be martyred. They want us to bomb occupied towns rammed with civilians. They want to portray this as a civil war within our country. They want armed stormtrooper jackboots patrolling the streets, shooting people who run away as a general policy. The perfect climate for terror, the perfect climate for oppression. And she's right, they do want a lot of those things. And they certainly want, in the first instance, us to stop providing succor and support to the people who fled from them in fear of their lives, the people who've put their children on flimsy vessels in the hope that they might actually reach a Greek beach. They hate the fact that when they get there are people giving them food and blankets and warmth and welcome. They despise the fact that this city and this country, and France to an even greater extent, routinely and almost always sees Muslim and Christian and Jew living alongside each other. They hate that. They hate it. They hate it. They hate it. And they're not alone. There are people in the Christian side of things, people on the Jewish side of things, people who don't have any religious affiliation at all but prefer to judge by other variables like skin colour or country of origin. There's plenty of people in all of those camps who hate it too. There's plenty of people who are white Christians who think multiculturalism is a disaster. Well, they call themselves white Christians. There's lots of people on this planet who hate the fact that some huge swathes of it now exist in relative harmony compared to history and compared to other countries. Harmony is what they hate. Do you know why? There's no power in harmony. There's no power in harmony. It's why from time immemorial preachers have needed to find a scapegoat, needed to find a target against which to turn the congregation. Otherwise there's no power. So it might be homosexuals, might be something as ridiculous as that. A friend of mine has lost his job recently for having an argument with a homosexual, with a homophobe on the radio. The notion that you need a target, you need to whip up your congregation. You can't do this. Very, very hard to do that by saying, let's all be nice to each other. Woohoo! Let's all be lovely. Let's all be kind and sweet and tolerant. It's very, very hard to do that. You want to get power? You want to get noticed? You're much better off standing, there's someone over there who wants to hurt you. Someone over there who's evil. There's someone over there who's wrong. There are some evil people in the world, but not nearly as many as those who hate harmony would have you believe. So yesterday, we spent a long time wondering how we can, in this country, avoid falling into the trap that the terrorists have set for us. And that trap is, well, let's actually start throwing away the freedoms that we cherish and value, and instead creating a world with less freedom in it, which is the world they want to inhabit. Let's stop doing the things that they despise, like loving our neighbour, being excellent to each other, decency, warmth, tolerance. Let's stop doing all of that. Let's be suspicious of everybody. Let's make everybody who's a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian or a Capricorn jump through some special hoop that nobody else has to jump through. Let's do all of those things. It's very easy. It's as old as the hills. Nothing new about this. A percentage of American college students in 1938, when asked whether or not they should welcome Jewish refugees from Central Europe in 1938, what percentage of American college students, not sort of members of the Ku Klux Klan or anything like that, but American college students thought that they should indeed welcome Jewish refugees from Central Europe in 1938. The percentage who thought that we should welcome them, or America should welcome them, was 31.2%. The percentage that thought the United States should not offer a haven in this country for Jewish refugees from Central Europe was 68.8%. So we always think it's new. It's happening in our time, because we're not old enough to remember the last time it happened. We've read the history books, but they were written by the winners. We always think it's new, this suspicion, this mistrust. It's not. It's probably part of evolution to be suspicious of the neighbouring tribe. But we don't live in caves anymore. And you don't need to be. Judge people by their behaviour, hate the culprits, don't punish the innocent. These seem to me to be really simple issues, but opening a newspaper, turning on your television, tuning in your radio, you realise they're not simple for a lot of people. The opposite is simple. They're complicated and controversial and difficult. Even on Twitter, you can put a tweet out saying, let's just condemn the culprits, but not attack the innocent. And some people have got a problem with that. It's always, I want to be given free rein to hate the innocent. I want to look at every Muslim in this country as a potential terrorist. And I certainly don't want any Syrian refugees here because, maybe one of them will be dodgy. And that's fine, because that is not racist or xenophobic or wrong. That's just frightened. And you should be frightened of what's going on in the Middle East and the desire to see it spread to our shores. What you shouldn't do is respond to the manifestation of danger in Paris by turning on the people running away from it. 03456060973 is the number you need, just to tell me whether or not there's any way we can avoid doing what Daesh want when it comes to the refugee crisis. They hate the fact we've made these people welcome. They hate the fact we've made these people, well, we haven't actually in this country, but Europe in particular. They hate the fact that they're running into the opposite of tyranny. They're running into the opposite of hatred. They're running into Europe. And Daesh hate that. So when you hear an awful lot of people, some of whom I think are scumbags, but some of whom I honestly don't, suggesting that we make Europe less nice, we make Europe less free, we make Europe less welcoming, and we particularly respond to these people fleeing from Daesh by turning them away, can't help thinking that we're doing the terrorists' work for them. And I stress again, some of the people encouraging this line of thought are doing it for reasons that are as old as the hills. They've been banging on, if they were banging on about Polish people yesterday, they're banging on about Syrian people today, it was Romanian people the day before that. Go back to 1938, it would have been Jewish people. Go back to 1974, it would have been Irish people. Go back to 1978, it would have been black people. Go back to 1981, it would have been Pakistani people. You know these people, yeah. Today it's Syrian people. How can we avoid doing what the terrorists want? On the specific issue of the refugees, 12 minutes after 12 minutes after 11, I beg your pardon, don't panic, you're not late. I don't know how we can do that. You hear people, they're not bad people, not all of them. I'm frightened, there's a million people coming, what if one of them is a terrorist? Well, I can't guarantee they won't be. Well, okay then I don't want to live in a free country anymore. Is that it, do you think? The white flag of surrender has already been waved at Daesh by people who say there might be one terrorist on that boat, so let's make Europe a less warm, a less free, a less unified, and a less welcoming continent. I think it is. I think it's saying to Daesh, yeah, all right, you're right, our freedoms are excessive, our tolerance is anti-Islamic, or whatever phrase Daesh are using this week. Our civilization is flawed. We want to be more like you. We want to judge people by their origins. We want to turn people away when they're desperate because, fear. We want to live in fear. That's what terrorism means. Live in fear. so many people seem to want to. 0345 6060973 is the number to call. Hit the numbers now, you will get through. Busy conversation about Jeremy Corbyn, one to which we will probably return at some point in the coming days. And as ever, fascinating to hear what you had to say, and apologies to everyone who didn't get involved, but I want to free up the switchboard now for this one. Yesterday, the conversation was about Britain and our behaviour almost towards each other, towards like our Muslim neighbours, for example. Amazing calls we took from caller after caller after caller, who you hope would just chip away at all of the people trying to portray an entire faith as terrorists, potential or otherwise. I don't know. Today, what about the Syrians? What about the refugees? What do you think? And this is the question I want you to answer, okay? What do you think Daesh want us to do to Syrian refugees? What do you think the terrorists want Britain's response to the refugee crisis to be? Because I think they're getting it. I think they're getting it when two people turn up in Scotland with their banners waving, and they've got a picture of a family running with a red line through it. We don't want you here. I think that's what the terrorists want. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we've got any choice. I don't want to make this binary. I really don't. You say, well, yes, we are doing what the terrorists want, but it's still the least bad option, James. Make me believe that. Because I don't think you can argue with me when I say turning them away, treating them with suspicion, treating them with hatred, treating them with bile, holding up banners, telling them to go home. Children, families arriving in Scotland today will be in receipt of, the local newspaper editor's written a magnificent piece about some of the bile that they're going to be exposed to. That is what the terrorists want to happen. That they don't want these people to see an alternative to their vision. Daesh, this is how you must live. Well, no, I don't have to live like that. I could go there and I wouldn't be treated like, you see, you are being treated like that over there. So, how can we avoid doing with the Syrian refugee crisis what the terrorists will be praying we do? 0345 6060973 is the number you need. You can email james at lbc.co.uk. You can text me on 84850. I know that's a tough question. I'm not patronising you. I can't answer it. How do we avoid doing to the Syrian refugees precisely what the murderous scum they are fleeing from want us to do? And you know what the murderous scum want us to do. They want us to treat the Syrian refugees badly. They want us to treat them like flotsam and jetsam. They want us to treat them like cockroaches and vermin. They want us to treat them like somehow subhuman. I've got a horrible feeling some of us already are.
James O'Brien, weekdays 10 till 1 on LBC.
21 minutes after 11. You will hear it if you haven't heard it already. There'll be politicians pounding it from podiums because they know that our fear, and indeed if they can get a little bit of hatred flowing through our veins, makes them stronger and in some cases richer. It's as old as humanity itself. It used to be priests and preachers doing it, and of course in the Daesh region it still is, and here it's now more likely to be politicians, demagogues, rabble-rousers and crypto-fascists. Got to have someone to hate. So, Daesh want us to do what to the Syrian refugees? How do they want us to treat the refugees? And are we going to do what they want? Michael's in Whitechapel. Michael, what would you like to say?
Oh, yeah. How do they want us to treat the refugees? They want us to hate them. They want us to send them back. If we send them back, they've got an option when the refugees go back. It's either join us or go back or basically survive on your own. It adds to their terrorism. They grow bigger if we send them back.
Still makes us safer though. If there's a 1 in 1,000, 1 in 10,000 could be dodgy. It still makes us safer, doesn't it, to send them all back?
It doesn't. It's such a tricky situation. As I was just explaining to someone else, why we treat innocents the same as terrorists or basically tar everyone with the same brush. I think it's part of human nature that we do that. For instance, if we've got a phobia of wasps, a real bad phobia of wasps, anything that comes near us and resembles a wasp, you will freak out until you're reassured that it's not a wasp. Something you can't help, it's something that's built into it. And I think we all do it unknowingly with other humans as well. Anyone from the same background, if that particular, what seems that particular group has done bad things, like the terrorist attacks, killings, bombings and stuff like that, instantly, majority of us will see someone from that same background and automatically be afraid until we're reassured that there's nothing wrong with the person in question or the people in question.
And again, it's exposure and familiarity are going to be key parts of that. I mean, even to move it just down to immigration in general, the reason why the anti-immigration feelings are so much higher in the areas where there isn't any is precisely because of what you say. Your familiarity breeds content, not contempt.
And that's it. And I mean, who do we have to blame for that? When we really look at it, is it the media's fault?
Well, yeah, a large part of it is.
And that's the thing, so...
A large part of it is the media's fault. I mean, humanity perhaps lends itself to the kind of manipulation that you describe, but I've got this saying, Michael, you've probably not heard it. It sounds a bit trite today, but it ties in with what you're telling me. You'd always sell a lot more tickets for the ghost train than you will for the speak your weight machine at the fair. So the media is selling tickets for the ghost train a lot of the time. And if you've got someone on the other side trying to get you to get on the speak your weight machine, he's going to tell you to jog on.
Yep. It goes. I mean, does it go even deeper than that? The media then shove down our throats that these people, all of these people, are bad, unknowingly to us, because we familiarise everyone the same.
Yeah.
And in that, in way, gives those of power also a type of control over us. If you kind of see where I'm coming from.
I do see exactly where you're coming from. I struggle even now to believe that the sort of senior politicians of our era are sophisticated enough or sinister enough to undertake what you describe. But I think what the media does, it does for the age-old reasons of power and prestige and money, and it ends up perhaps providing more money to go down the path that you've described. It's not an ideological decision, it's a commercial one a lot of the time. Simple enough question, and I'd like you to answer it if you are particularly persuaded that we should not be helping Syrian refugees. There's an awful lot of encouragement out there for you to hold that position, so I'm not going to criticise you for being persuaded of that. I just want you to tell me what you think Daesh would be encouraging you to do with the Syrian refugees. It sounds to me to be a pretty identical position to that of some politicians in this country. What do you think Daesh want? Oh, well, they want to make multiculturalism look doomed. Well, they want to make tolerance look wrong. They want to make civilization look flawed. Hear any echoes of that in Britain? Or France or Germany? Marine Le Pen looking good for the Calais mayoral election. What's her view on multiculturalism? Probably the same as Daesh's. Liz is in St Albans. Liz, what would you like to say?
Hi, I would just like to say that I think Daesh want us to absolutely hate all of the Syrian refugees and to send them back. They are deliberately trying to cause an aggravation.
It's going well, isn't it?
No, not in St Albans, it isn't.
Go on.
We set up a couple of months ago St Albans for Refugees, which was set up deliberately to try and help refugees when they come to settle in St Albans, and also to provide succour and help for those who are stuck in camps in Calais and further afield in Europe. And I have to say that I have been absolutely inundated with donations, both monetary and goods. We have had a multicultural approach. We've had every community in St Albans has been involved in helping out with donating, with sorting. Everybody ringing me saying, this is a great job we're doing. It has been such an edifying experience to actually see how everybody in St Albans has reacted to this.
Well, not everybody. Let's be fair.
Well, okay, I can't say everybody in St Albans has reacted in an edifying manner, but if they haven't made it public to me.
Okay. They have in some areas of the country, of course. We've seen sort of protests, and in France as well, there have been protests against migration in general, let alone specifically Syrian refugees. Do you think Paris might change that mood in St Albans, Liz?
So far, no. I've still been inundated since with phone calls for people wanting to help. I mean, I think the whole issue of immigration, we have to be very, very careful. I'm an immigrant. The difference is I'm a white immigrant and I came over from Ireland. But in the 90s, when the IRA was still operating, I remember having a boss when there was a bomb in St Albans, and I was 5 minutes late getting to work because the bus was late, and my boss actually turned around to me and he said, I thought you were involved in that bomb. So, you know, it's purely that we've moved on to a different terrorist.
A lot of people are at great pains to portray this as a very new threat, and they're not unique. They're not all motivated by malice or ill will. They say this is not the same as the IRA, or it's not the same as the Tamil Tigers. This is a very different sort of terrorism, and the fact, of course, that they have territory adds to that theory, what would you describe as the proof that they are just new variations on an ancient tradition?
I would say the aim of any terrorist is to spread fear. And if they can spread fear, then they have won. And the only thing that we can do to avoid that is to actually make a conscious decision to live our lives not in fear, to go about our lives as we normally would, to go to the football match this evening between England and France, to go into our city centres, to go to our art galleries, to go to Paris, to go wherever we would normally have gone if we didn't live in this atmosphere of fear.
I don't know what part of Ireland you're from, Liz, originally, but there's been a petrol bomb attack in Ballymena this morning that the family and the police believe to be a hate crime linked to Islamophobia.
I wasn't aware of that. I haven't seen the news this morning, so I wasn't aware of the attack.
That is how Daesh wants us to respond.
Yes, absolutely. And I still think, you know, with the best wish to this family, I don't know what's occurred. I haven't seen that item of news.
Nor had I. It just popped up now, but I've checked
but
it. It's kosher.
We do need, if we give in, then we might as well just all leave the country and go and live somewhere else in the middle of a desert and just let them get away with it.
Can I say something very ungallant?
You may.
Are you a little older than me, Liz? I'm 43.
I don't know what age you are.
I'm 43 and a half.
Well, I'm 49.
Okay. So, well then, you remember the troubles, perhaps you were just at that age, that more formative age than I was. I was a kid, I remember...
very aware of them because
I remember comments at school, but you were going... Hang on, I just want to ask you, at that time, I know the no dogs, no blacks, no Irish signs, I know that tradition, but during the troubles, were there calls for people from Ireland not to be allowed into Britain ever, any of them, in case one of them was a terrorist?
I wouldn't remember. I'm too young.
No, well, that's what I thought, you see. That's why I was trying to establish vintage before asking question. You're listening to James O'Brien on LBC. You need to tell me what you think Daesh want Britain to do and the European Union to do about the Syrian refugee crisis. What for them would be a result? Nicolas Henan is a Frenchman who was held hostage by Islamic State, Daesh, for 10 months. Obviously, he's not going to know as much about what they're really like as a Fox News presenter or a Daily Mail columnist, but I thought you might be interested in some of his words. He writes, "As a proud Frenchman, I am as distressed as anyone about the events in Paris, but I am not shocked or incredulous. I know Islamic State. I spent 10 months as an ISIS hostage, and I know for sure that our pain, our grief, our hopes, our lives do not touch them. Theirs is a world apart. Most people only know them from their propaganda material, but I have seen behind that. In my time as their captive, I met perhaps a dozen, including Mohammed Emwazi. Jihadi John was one of my jailers. He nicknamed me Baldy. It's a brilliant piece. I'll retweet it. His cellmates were beheaded. And you know what his conclusion is? They fear our unity more than our airstrikes. How they want us to respond to their attacks is by being less unified, less warm, if you will, and less Western." How fearful are you that we're walking headlong into precisely the Europe that Daesh want us to live in? And the question that I'll ask you to highlight that issue is this. How do you think the terrorists want us to treat the refugees? Simon's in Basingstoke. Simon, what would you like to say?
I'd like to say that I think you're probably on the wrong track here, James.
It's a question. How do you think the terrorists want to treat...
I don't think they care. I really don't think they care at all. And okay. I think there are practical reasons, strategic reasons why allowing this flow of migration is worsening the situation.
No, I've had that conversation a lot of times, and I respect your position that you don't like it and it's worsening the situation. But why do you think the terrorists don't care about the fate of the people that are running away from them?
Because they are not significant to them. They're unbelievers. In fact, the majority of them are probably either Sunni Muslims or Shia Muslims or Sunni Muslims who don't believe in Wahhabism, or Shia Muslims.
And you think that you honestly think if they run away from what Daesh promotes and end up somewhere that represents the opposite of what Daesh promotes and end up happy, you think they still won't care?
No. Why would it be significant to them? What they want to do is create terror. What they want to do is to generate publicity for themselves to encourage recruitment. I think a more effective... And
the way we treat the refugees won't do either of those things?
It won't... How is that significant?
Well, if I'm trying to recruit you, and you are syrian, and you arrive in... Where are you? Basingstoke, and you get treated like a scumbag, you're going to be a lot easier to recruit. Especially if I've run to Basingstoke in the belief that Western values include multiculturalism, tolerance and freedom, and then I get there and I'm hearing stuff not dissimilar to what I was hearing back in Daesh territory. That's the recruitment sergeant's dream, isn't it? You think the West is welcoming. You think these freedoms and values are held widely in these communities. You wait till you get there and you'll be treated very, very badly simply because of the colour of your skin or your country of origin. Then the recruitment sergeant's job is half done already. So they do care.
Don't you think it would be more significant to remove individuals like Amran Chowdhury from this country?
You're doing it again. I mean, that's not what I'm asking you.
Well, but James, you're asking the wrong questions.
Okay. Is that just because you can't answer it, or because you can answer it but don't like what your answer is?
Because you've been wrong before, James. You said that.
Don't talk about.
You said that Nigel Farage was incorrect about his statements about ISIS using the migrants to infiltrate this country. And that's exactly. Well, it's not this country, as far as we're aware, but it has happened.
No, I didn't.
You did, James.
No, ISIS said they are smuggling terrorists into with the refugees, and I said it would be a miracle if they weren't.
Well, actually, James, I think you should go back and check on what you said, because
Simon, I think your life might be enriched by going back over my previous broadcast. Mine's a little bit too full for that.
Well, I think if
can we have one go? Can we have one go at the question?
I think then that's something you.
Can we have one go at the question, or are we just going to do?
Well, the
how do you think the terrorists want us to treat the refugees?
James, they really don't care.
Okay.
They really don't care.
So let's treat them really well then.
I don't think you understand.
Let's treat them really well then.
Sorry?
Let's treat them really well then.
I don't think we shouldn't treat them really well.
But then we're agreeing. Let's make them welcome. How many do you think we should have welcomed?
I think what we should have done is we should have provided as much support as we could within the nearby countries.
Oh, so you don't want to welcome them? You don't want to make them welcome?
No, because when you leave under the UN Charter, when you leave a safe country, you are no longer a refugee, James. You're a migrant. That's not my opinion. That's the opinion of the 1951 UN Charter for Refugees.
And the terrorists don't care how we treat them?
No, they don't. Why would they care, James?
Well, I thought it was because their whole business was about spreading terror. Their whole business was about standing up against the things that we're supposed to hold dear, like tolerance and multiculturalism, the values. And I don't think it would have been fair to hit you over the head with this, but when a bloke who's been held prisoner by them for 10 months says the single thing they hate the most is seeing the welcome that these people received in Germany, and again, without talking about me or Uncle Nigel or anybody else, why would he tell that lie, do you think, Simon?
Oh, I don't think he's telling a lie, but I think he's given an opinion. But I don't think that
he was in jail watching them,
or have read, or or other people's opinion about Daesh would indicate that what your view is correct.
I don't have a view. I'm just asking a question. And your answer is, Daesh don't care how we treat refugees. That's a perfectly valid answer. I don't know why you had to get so personal. Harry's in Bromley. Harry, what would you like to say?
Good morning, James. How are we doing today?
I think I'm all right.
Okay.
I'll have to listen back to some previous programmes to make sure, though.
Have you got the time for that?
Well, we'll see. Carry on, Harry.
Right, okay. Well, you kind of hijacked my point a little bit, but I say point. It's probably more a theory or a thumbs up, but I'm inclined to agree with what you just said to the last caller, is that I think Daesh are trying to intentionally perpetrate a situation where refugees come here, get treated badly, have a really bad experience, which then makes their recruitment drive 10 times easier. It saves them standing on the street corners peddling, down dark alleys, because that's a hard sell. Whereas if someone's had a bad experience, had their house firebombed, or poo stuck through their letterbox, or whatever some of these people have to endure, somebody coming up and saying, well, you know what, if you come with us and join up with us, that'll all end and we can give it to them good. So
listen, let's be honest. It's obvious, right, how they want us to react. The only earthly way in which you can continue to sustain a scepticism, a disapproval or a rejection of refugees fleeing Islamic State is to lie and say, oh, I don't think the terrorists care at all.
Well, absolutely. But, I mean, let's not forget, and, going back to one of your earlier points earlier this week, we have this dichotomy where, what do we call them? Are they terrorists? Are they freedom fighters? Whatever badge you want to apply to these people, at the end of the day, they are fighting a guerrilla war, and they are using guerrilla tactics. And they're never clean. They're not abiding to the Geneva Convention. We are, but they're not. So the rule book is out the window.
Crikey, I thought it was complicated enough already. That's a conversation for another day. I sort of expressed some sympathy a few weeks ago for Marine A's situation and ended up endorsing pretty much the position that you just endorsed, but it's not an easy position to hold. The whole point about these conventions is that we're supposed to be held to a higher standard than our enemies. That's what the Geneva Convention and other such treaties are for. But I hear exactly what you're saying. Is there another answer, though? Is there an answer that actually sounds vaguely plausible? What do you think Daesh want us to do? They want us to do exactly what some people are encouraging us to do, including Mr. Farage, the politician referenced by the previous caller. They want us to be talking about turning them all away because there might be one terrorist there. They want us to be talking about all British Muslims need to be looked at a little bit suspiciously now. All Muslims could be part of this problem. You know, the population of Muslims has gone up by, I don't know how many, but that's really scary. That is exactly what they want us to do. That's my answer to the question. Is there any other answer, apart from pretending you don't believe the terrorists care about their victims' fates? Running away from a terrorist, and the terrorist doesn't care if you end up somewhere safe and happy? It's their worst nightmare for the people running away from them to end up somewhere safe and happy. Their dream, they'll run straight back again, because the place they've run to was horrible.
James O'Brien, weekdays 10 till 1 on LBC.
10 minutes to 12 is the time. I'm going to tweet this article. If you follow out Mr. James OB, you can read it. It'll probably come as a bit of a surprise to you if you're kind enough to listen on a regular basis, but The Guardian is not my newspaper of choice of a morning. But I think when they publish an article by someone held hostage by Islamic State for 10 months, it's certainly worth having a look at what he has to say about them. And looking at the aftermath of Paris, he talks about how plugged into social media they are. With their news and social media interests, they will be noting everything that follows their murderous assault on Paris. And my guess, writes Nicholas Henan, is that right now the chant among them will be, we are winning. They will be heartened by every sign of overreaction, of division, of fear, of racism, of xenophobia. They will be drawn to any examples of ugliness on social media. Central to their worldview is the belief that communities cannot live together with Muslims. And every day their antennae will be tuned towards finding supporting evidence. The pictures from Germany of people welcoming migrants will have been particularly troubling to them. Cohesion, tolerance, it is not what they want to see. And I mentioned that. You don't have to agree with him. I'm not being facetious when I say just because he spent 10 months locked up with Islamic State doesn't mean he definitely knows what he's talking about. I was being facetious when I suggested he probably knows a little bit more about their motivation than a newspaper columnist or a Fox News presenter. But 10 months locked up by them, he says the worst thing from their point of view is cohesion and tolerance, and that they'll be feasting on social media examples of xenophobia, racism, and they hate the idea that Muslims can live alongside non-Muslims in other communities. And then, as if by magic, I turn to my inbox. This is from Dom in Croydon, and he says, invite the whole Muslim world here, and us Brits can leave. If I had my way, I'd lay on a train for them to work camps and a nice shower. So, Dom, I appreciate that this is probably going to be a little bit too subtle to get through your skull. Someone held hostage by these terrorists has just said that the message, like the one you sent to me, which is now, of course, winging its way around the ether, will have them high-fiving and cheering. Nice one, mate. Great work. Theo Ushwood, LBC's political editor, is here to talk to us about George Osborne's speech earlier today, focusing upon well, I suppose it's a preferable kind of threat, isn't it? Albeit that chaos can be wreaked upon us by cybercrime, it is not, as yet, fatal.
Yes, the Chancellor, George Osborne, James, has been at GCHQ, the listening station down in Cheltenham, and he's been setting out the government's plans to respond to cyber attacks. Now, until now, cyber security has been about defence, putting up barriers to prevent hackers intent on stealing our personal information. We saw the damage done to TalkTalk and their customers in recent weeks. Today, Mr. Osborne sought to change the game. Cyber security was no longer just about defence, it was about attacking those who seek to cause us harm.
Our military are equipped to fight the wars of the 21st century. That means they need to be prepared for hybrid conflicts played out in cyberspace as well as on the battlefield. A 21st century military has to operate as effectively in cyberspace as it does on land and sea, in air and space. Our commitment to spending 2% of GDP on defense means we can invest in a military that is cyber-trained, cyber-secure, cyber-enabled, with the ability to fight in every domain of future conflicts.
Now, last Friday's attacks in Paris were the backdrop for this speech, but actually this has less to do with ISIL and the harm that they can do companies through cyberspace, but actually more to do with smaller splinter groups, hackers and so forth, and also state-sponsored cyber attacks as well. Of course, there's been a lot of talk, hasn't there, about the Chinese and the threat they pose to the UK in this respect.
Who gets paid the money? Do we know? Because I like it when politicians make announcements about... So does that mean there's loads of cybercrime experts currently flipping burgers or working in Costa Coffee, and now finally they're going to be able to be paid to go out and fight cybercrime?
Well, they're looking to recruit hundreds more intelligence officers. Also looking partnerships, George Osborne was saying, with smaller companies, trying to get more people in the door. But actually it was interesting. I was listening to one interview yesterday with the former intelligence chief, who was saying that actually it takes quite a lot of time to get these people trained up, to get them familiar with working for the security services in this respect.
Of course it does. And to refer back to the other big political story of the day, the Jeremy Corbyn comments about the shoot to kill policy. It's perfectly possible that I've misconstrued them, but talk to me about how many members of the shadow cabinet also found the comments a little bit
a lot. It's causing huge ructions within the party, not just at the top of the party within the shadow cabinet, but also within the parliamentary party. It was a very heated atmosphere in the committee room last night when Jeremy Corbyn faced his own MPs. When he suggested he was wrong, there was a loud banging of tables. And of course, we've talked about, repeatedly, is this the end of Jeremy Corbyn after one gaffe after the other? But this really does feel like something has clicked within the party, something has changed, and now I think there are those who are going to be seeking behind the scenes to make moves to depose Jeremy Corbyn off the Labour leadership.
Before Christmas?
I wouldn't want to bet.
Well, I'm going to make you.
I'd say he probably has until Christmas. He could survive till Christmas, but actually afterwards, I think in the new year, heading towards those local elections.
I hope he hangs on till Christmas, because he's going to get a hell of a lot of jumpers from the faithful.
I will say this: the question mark is over whether he can last until the elections, and that was the time frame that even his critics, when he was elected Labour leader, were giving him to those elections, making in May, the City Hall and up in Scotland and Wales, and they were giving him that space to strengthen his position as Labour leader and have some success. But I think that timetable has now been ripped up, and now people are looking to move quicker.
And maybe this is a speculation too far, Theo, but who would be the maypole around which the plotters dance?
I think Hilary Benn. People are talking about buying shares in Hilary Benn, the Shadow Foreign Secretary. Of course, he undermined Jeremy Corbyn today in one interview when he said that he can't speak for Jeremy. But he thinks it's perfectly reasonable for the police to shoot a terror suspect intent on causing harm or loss of life. So that's one name that's just come into the frame. Dan Jarvis, of course, he ruled himself out last time, said it was too soon for family reasons. Has his family life moved on, his children grown up, and now is he in a position to take that leadership role?
May. It's highly I know you're a relatively new father, but it's highly unlikely. It's highly unlikely his children have grown up since May. But I don't know if I'm being unfair. Has his view changed, perhaps, rather than have his children undergone some sort of accelerated aging process? And Keir Starmer, or is he going to be too new and possibly too toxic for the people queuing up to attack?
And the speech I took the greatest note of at the Labour Party conference was that of the Deputy Leader Tom Watson. That sounded like a Labour leadership speech. But of course we had that apology, didn't we, and the whole furore around what he'd said about Leon Britton, the former Home Secretary, and that VIP paedophile ring. And so his stock is down.
Theo Ashwood, LBC's political editor, many thanks indeed. Sylvie's in Kennington. Sylvie, what would you like to say?
Well, hi, James.
Hello, Sylvie.
Hi. Well, it's actually the second time calling into LBC in 14 years, so I feel quite strongly about that.
Evidently.
And mainly because I'm talking to you, because I think you're the best presenter ever.
Oh, don't be ridiculous.
Apart from that, well, I'm actually from Austria. I'm from a small region which borders to Germany, so we are close to Bavaria. So we have lots of refugees, and they, they fit in perfectly well, and people are more than happy to help. And in Bavaria as well, I've got quite a lot of friends who do everything possible just to help, because I think partly because of our history of what happened, and we have actually grown up, with a huge burden on our shoulders on one side, and we've come to realize that it's better to be, united, and you can't live a life with being fearful of who you don't actually know. I mean, I was actually teaching immigrants in Austria, and at that time in 2006, my husband, who works as a journalist from Italy, he was taken hostage in Afghanistan. And when he was taken hostage in Afghanistan, I happened to teach, and it was just the most amazing experience, because all the refugees were actually uniting, and they were so welcoming, and they used to pray for me, and I used to sometimes break down in tears in front of them, because I couldn't stand the pressure when the foreign ministry would call in and give me some updates. So every time they would call in, I used to break down in front of the class, and they would come up and hug and pray for me in the break. And it was, those people had gone through the worst trauma possibly imaginable, and they were actually praying for me, for someone who was actually, much better off, and who hadn't gone through any trauma. But then I was
better off in some ways, but with a husband being held hostage by, was it the Taliban?
Well, it's a long story. I mean, it's still not clear who actually took him hostage. He came back alive after 23 days, so he was released, and we had a daughter afterwards, another child.
Yes.
So it was a happy ending. I just wish I could, extend the love. I've just read a story on Facebook where this man just posted a really emotional story about his wife who got killed.
Yes, I've seen that as well. His wife and son. Yes.
Yes, and I just hope I could have said the same thing if he hadn't come back alive.
Well,
I wish.
Here's the thing. And who knows? And thank God you never had to find out how you would have coped if he'd been killed. But here's the thing. There's plenty of people in this country. It's a little bit tempting sometimes to malign them all as knuckle-dragging racists, but they're not. Plenty of people in this country have genuine concerns that we might be letting into our communities people who want to do things like the events we saw in Paris. You, as someone whose husband has been held hostage by, we have to presume, fundamentalists, you say to them, well, how do you stop them being frightened, Sylvie?
Well, you can't live your life being frightened. I mean, we have particularly chosen to live in London because it's multicultural. We could live in a seaside town where he's from. I could live in the mountains in Austria and feel safe, shielded from the so-called, multiculturalism, which would expose me to potential threats. I chose to live here because that's what I welcome about humanity, being able to live together as one, being able to be welcoming. You will always have the one odd, dark soul who will try to destroy humanity as such. But if we let that happen, we as humans have just failed.
We as humans will have failed if we allow the possibility of one terrorist sneaking into the country to empower us to turn away all of the refugees.
Exactly. I mean, if I go to my daughter's school where 50 languages are spoken, I feel so blessed to be able to actually do that. I just have friends from all over the world, and that's what makes us human. We are different. We have to be welcoming. We have to be able to live as one. We have to stay united. We can't let hatred win over, because as soon as you let hatred, take over, that's it.
There are some very loud voices in this country who appear to be seeking that hatred, not on a level of carnage and death, but certainly on a level of division and rejection. We're going to struggle to shout them down, I think, Sylvie.
I really, and I feel so saddened by this. When I hear Farage and the likes of him talking, I just feel like this is not what I stand for, and I will never ever accept that as any of And I will try to reason with the people who will shout the loudest. But some people are just so narrow-minded. You can't argue with some people, but you can just continue smiling. When I see a lady next door working down in her back, I just smile at her because it makes her feel more comfortable. I see the fear in her eyes when she looks at me, because she's frightened herself that I will look upon her in a bad way. And she smiles back because she's probably just relieved, to see me actually smiling at her. And that's what should actually happen. We should respond with a smile, respond just with nice gestures, just being genuinely human, that's what makes us different from these animals.
Sylvie, thank you.
Thank you, James.